Alright, so even though the video I just recently did about these particular Deutsch solid contact crimp tools is not very old, I actually ran across something worth, taking a second look at it. So if you were to look at that video, we discussed other options like W crimpers and stuff for stamped contacts, and these tools here only crimp solid terminals. Okay, terminals have a size, not necessarily the wire gauge they go in. You could watch my longer video on that, but this is what they look like. These contacts are a common family of terminals for Deutsch connectors. This one, the large one, is a number 12, but it doesn't just take 12 wire. It does actually take 12 wire, but that's not its limit. This is the 16 contact, and this is the 20 size contact. Again, that's not the wire gauge. That's the common family name. There are contacts in these various sizes that take multiple different wire gauges of wire. So you're going to need to look that stuff up to make sure you're using the right contact for the job. But they have some overlap, right? The largest terminal, which is a special for this terminal, could go to 14 gauge. And I believe there's also a special that goes down to 24 gauge, but I've never seen it for sale. This contact is typically somewhere around the 20 gauge kind of range, but there's other options available as well. And then this terminal is generally a 12 gauge terminal, but there is a 10 gauge version of this available, but it's only in stamped, so not a solid. Anyway, you need to look at the catalog for that. The best way to do that is to look at the instruction manual for this tool right here. This is the HDT-48-00. This is the Deutsch branded tool, like their name brand tool. This is the DMC, Daniels Manufacturing Tool. This is the AFM8 tool. This tool costs about $400, and it's really limited to number 20 size contacts. Okay, so that's these little guys over here, which are limited at about 7.5 amps. What I said about this in the other video is basically that, and I talked about positioners and interchangeable tools, but what I wanted to show is this JReady tool here in the middle. I didn't have this before. It actually came from a coworker. He let me borrow this, so I was going to try it out, and I decided I would take this short little clip of it. So as you can see, it's substantially shorter, but it has a very similar positioner on it. Okay, and again, this is not the Daniels tool. The Daniels tool would have a receptacle, quick change receptacle here that looks like this quick change receptacle, but much larger. And it uses a tool turret where it has a rotating barrel turret. You click a button, a piece ejects, and you can rotate it. That would fit the AF8, which is about a $595 tool. So this tool right here is a modified version of the AF8 from Daniels Manufacturing, these guys in Florida. The reason this tool from JReady is interesting, though, is it is the smaller body, so it's very similar in size to the AF-M8 Daniels tool. You can see it's a tiny bit bigger, so it's kind of somewhere in between this tool and this tool. And that's actually pretty cool, because if you were to take this tool in your hand and you were to use it, I wear an extra large glove, and you can see it's pretty easy for me to operate this with one hand. If we were to take this tool, however, and we were to try to operate it, I can't reach that, right? So I have to kind of start collapsing the tool and then kind of move it around in your hand and then crimp it. So the advantage to this tool, the HDT-48 or the Daniels AF8 with the interchangeable tool with the rotating tool turret, that would be a TH1A. So the TH1A is $135, and this body from Daniels is $595. So it's a very expensive tool. This, the genuine Deutsch tool, which again, it was made by Daniels for them, the HDT-48. This tool varies about $329, but it can be as absurd as $782, depending on where you buy it from. So obviously, if you're going to buy the genuine tool, it has a great range. So this is what I said earlier, is this tool will crimp all of these contacts, right? So it'll a 12 size, a 16 size, and a 20 size. This tool, again, with the correct positioner, this is a mil-spec positioner. It's not the Deutsch positioner, but there is one that fits this for Deutsch contacts. Also, the Autosport line of connectors can also be crimped with this, but again, those are small gauge as well. This particular tool is limited to 20 gauge contacts, right? So, or excuse me, the number 20 contacts, these little guys, and kind of generically speaking, 20 gauge wire as well is kind of the limit of this tool. It was meant for smaller than that. This tool, however, that I keep kind of skipping around is an ACT ACT-M202 from JReady. This tool costs $179 from their webpage, and it does all of these 12, 16, and 20 frame contacts. So that's really cool. It's a smaller tool than this tool. It's slightly bigger than this tool. It's at a very reasonable price, and I figured I would play around with it. But I also decided to at least show some pictures of it. I didn't see a whole ton of reviews on this tool, and it's kind of something different. It's kind of this tool in kind of the little bit size of this tool. The only thing I can tell so far is if I were to, I'll use the smaller AF-M8 tool, you can see that the ratchet mechanism does not move. Everything's super tight, right? Same thing with this tool here. Like, none of this stuff moves around. If I were to look at the JReady tool and I were to open it up, you can kind of see the mechanism moves around inside the tool a bit. You can see it's not like tight as a drum like these other tools are, but it still feels like a pretty high quality tool, and I'll bet you that it would work just fine if you only need to do, you know, a reasonable amount of these. If you're doing it in a production environment, buy these tools. Buy the DMC tools that work forever and ever. However, I thought I would crimp some small pieces of solder. This is like regular electrical solder. This is rosin core, so it's hollow in the middle. And it would allow me to take impact marks from these two tools, this tool and this tool, set on the same settings, technically for the same terminals based on the directions. So I'm going to compare those under a video magnifier, so stand by. Okay, so here you can see on the video magnifier, or at least the best I could get, the crimps from those two tools. The top one, this one, is the original Deutsch tool. This bottom one is the JReady tool. Now, of course, you could gauge these with go-no-go gauges, but I was just kind of curious what sort of marks they would make. And they look to be arranged in the same fashion as they should be, as well as similar depth. Again, you could check it with the gauge pin tools and verify that, which there is a manual insert about that for the JReady tool, so I assume it would be able to pass. So I don't see why you couldn't use this tool. So let's go back to the workbench. Okay, so some kind of closing remarks here. I think that this tool's worth a look. Is it as nice a tool as the Daniels tools? No, it's not. But it's a fraction of the money, right? Like $179 is quite a bit cheaper than these other tools. Now, the iWis tool I mentioned before is a copy of this tool here, which is about $111. So that's a slight bit cheaper, but I have not used that tool, so I guess I can't give any commentary about it. I've used other iWis tools and they were okay. But, you know, I think this JReady tool really is worth a look. It looks to be very similar as far as the crimp performance, and for, you know, regular guys that are doing this for their own projects, and this is not a military application or a, you know, professional motorsports application, I think this tool would work well for most people's uses for a reasonable amount of money. Anyway, thanks.